Zak Deckich. This is my 99 Dodge Viper ACR. This is the second gen of the Dodge Vipers. They went from 1996 to 2002. This is, being a 1999, is also the first year for an ACR. Kind of a little background on the ACR real quick is ACRs had 18-inch BBS wheels from the factory. They're 1810s up front, 1813s in the rear. ACRs also have the racing harness in the front. They have a fog light delete kit, and they're also on Coney coilovers. So most of the Vipers that you see too, non-ACRs, they have a fog light delete, which is kind of something they did to kind of save weight. It was just their race car inspiration, I guess. Same thing with like the fuel caps. This is something with all Vipers that's kind of more like the traditional quick fill from the Le Mans era. Usually like around the 60s, 70s when they kind of did the quick fuel. And it still has a gas cap, but you can actually still remove the gas cap if you're actually racing, and it actually still seals with a rubber seal. So if you're doing a race, you can do like a quick fill for your fuel. Gas cap was just mandatory through the US. But it kind of has that Carroll Shelby, the Daytona Coupe kind of vibe to it. The roof rack, or the roof on the hood of the car, they call that the double bubble or the gurney bubble. Dan Gurney raced in the 60s in Le Mans for Carroll Shelby for the GT40 cars. Now, Dan Gurney was like 6'4", 6'5", so when he would sit in the car, he was fairly tall when he needed a bubble in the car. So that's kind of where they kind of got the design for him on the bubble. Same thing on the back of the car, they call it like a camback. Kind of what they did with the Chevrolet, or not the Chevrolet, the Cobra Daytona. Same thing with like the ACRs, you got the racing harnesses. It's a 5-point harness through Simpson. That was pretty part of the ACR package, and you got the little plaque on the center of the dash that shows that it's an ACR. ACR is American Club Racer. This was something that they wanted that you could take to the track. You could actually adjust the coilovers, the rebound, I mean, it's a 3-way adjustable coilover. The factory forged BBS wheels are a lot lighter, so a lot stronger, they won't crack, plus they look great. A couple of things that I've done to the car personally, I've added the Autoform TA front lip splitter on the front, just kind of give it that race car look. It might be functional, it may not be, I just think it looks cool. The only things that I've done with it, I mean, it has 2-piston front caliper brakes up front, and the rears are actually 2. The factory is single, but these are actually off a C4 Corvettes off the fronts. That was kind of the weak point on some of these cars, was the brakes were adequate, they weren't fantastic. The car is not super light. It's 3,300 pounds, maybe 3,200 pounds. So the braking is actually pretty good now, especially with the 2 pistons in the rear. Kind of neat thing with 90s Dodge too is that all the door handles are electronic. That was a super interesting thing for the 90s. Nothing was electronic, everything was still latch driven. So weird things on some of the car too, like the little dash vents that some people may not know, like for the heater core. I had a 72 Dodge pickup truck and a 69 Charger. That's the exact same vents that they used in the 60s and 70s. Just carryover parts. Same thing with the window switches, they're off the Dodge Dakota. The 6 lugs on the Viper, every Dodge car, truck was all 5 lug, except the Viper and the Dodge Dakota. So the Dakotas and the Viper had the exact same lug pattern. And actually the hubs are almost identical. So kind of interesting. It's kind of, I wouldn't say a parts bin car, but it is definitely 90s Dodge car. So, and also too, this car being a 99, it is the first year for the ACR. So the second generation Vipers, which this is from 1996 to 2002. The 96 to 1999 had the forged internals. 99 being the last year for the forged internals, and also the first year for the ACR, which makes this car a little bit more desirable. In 2000, they went away with the forged and went, which is the cast pistons. And then 2000 and 2001, they got ABS. So this car does not have ABS, it does not have traction control, it doesn't have stability control. It is your right foot and your steering wheel only. So how good of a driver you are, based on you. So there is no name on this car whatsoever. I mean, it is a street legal race car built in the 90s or early 2000s. And they haven't really made cars like that anymore. You know, something that looks, I mean, this was designed in 1989 when they were doing the Indianapolis 500 pace car in 1991. Dodge was going to use the Dodge Stealth, which was a Mitsubishi 3000 GT. And the UAW, the United Auto Workers, were extremely upset that they were going to use that Japanese-based car for the Indianapolis pace car. So Dodge was like, well, we got this 1989 concept car that we'll try to get that ready for the Indianapolis. They brought in Carroll Shelby, helped design it. It was Bob Lutz, who worked for BMW as the ultimate drive machine. He was that guy. Tom Gale, Dick Winkles, they all got together, made this car. And in 1991, they had Carroll Shelby drive the Indianapolis 500 car. And they went in production the very next year. So you're talking 3 years from concept car to production. Really short time frame. And that might be why there's some cheap parts on it, but it is what it is. Cool thing too, like with the hood, I mean, these hoods were at one point in the 90s the largest and most expensive automotive body part ever produced. If you were to get in a little fender bender and break these, a lot of these were going for $20,000 to $25,000. Now they've gone down a little bit. You can get them online, $6,000, $7,000. But kind of show you, kind of open the hood. It's a clamshell style. There's just a little hood latch underneath the bumper. A little safety latch up front. So it is a 8-liter. It's 488 cubic inches. The ACR is made 460 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. The original 96 to 99 just GTS cars were 450 horsepower, 490 foot-pounds of torque. It's got 10 extra horsepower being an ACR with the smooth tubes and the factory K&N filters. The originals had an accordion tube kind of right here, just kind of restricted some airflow. So with the smooth tubes and the filters, got an extra 10 horsepower and 10 torque. Like I said, there's no ABS. You can actually adjust the brake bias front to rear. If you want the rears to be a little bit less heavy or more towards the front, you can kind of adjust that. This got a few little tune things to it. It's got a full exhaust on it. It's got a new Be Cool radiator, row tune, just very 90s style. Nothing too modern. I don't want to make this car too modern, I guess, you know, doing the new SCT tunes or doing twin turbos. I like a naturally aspirated big block, well, small block. And these are actually based on the LA Mopar engines, like the 318s and 360s. So if you actually take the head off, the actual head off, it'll look like a 318, 360 head just with one extra cylinder. Another thing that's kind of interesting too is, at the time, Chrysler owned Lamborghini. And everyone thinks that Lamborghini designed the engine or it's a V10 truck, you know, because actually Dodge had V10 trucks. Well, it wasn't the case. Actually, Dick Winkles, the engineer for Viper for the actual engine, they used Chrysler for the aluminum blocks. Lamborghini had really big aluminum blocks, I think the 5-liter, the 5.2, and the Countach and Diablo. So Lamborghini showed us how to make big aluminum blocks. So the engine is not designed by Lamborghini. It wasn't built in Italy. It's all built here in the U.S. at the Connors Avenue plant in Michigan. But it is 100% built and designed in America. But Lamborghini did help design the block, or to give us the castings for the block. So get that out there. No, it is not a V10 truck engine like everyone might think. And it is all aluminum. And the valve covers are actually magnesium. So you kind of see a little bit of it peeling. That's just paint and powder coat don't stick to magnesium very well. Magnesium is extremely light, it's extremely durable, but when it catches fire, it can be dangerous. Magnesium burns and burns and burns. So the previous owner before me actually put different scoops in the hood. Kind of were to celebrate like the Le Mans race cars from 98, 99, 2000. Actually, Viper won 3 years in a row at Le Mans in the GT class. And their hoods were very similar to this, and it kind of helps with low pressure and getting heat out. That's what these two here for, is for low pressure zones, to get the air out of the hood. And this is kind of more designed to get the actual heat out. A lot of people always thought that these here are fake, the little speaker grills. This one is actually fake. This one's actually for the air conditioning. So it would be different just to have one scoop instead of two. So that's the reason why a lot of people think that they're fake. They're actually not. This one side is, this one's just for air conditioning. And this right here is the actual NACA duct that's for the intake. So if you kind of go down and kind of look at it, you could actually see the intake just goes straight in. So it's a true cold air intake, and that is all factory on Gen 2 Vipers. The 92s, the 95s, and the RT10s do not have these scoops on the hood. It's a plain smooth hood. The second gen's got the NACA duct and the 2 low pressure vents. And actually too, the car actually has a pretty good storage area in back, being a hatchback in a way. Can I walk around here? My key out real fast. So it actually does have a spare tire in the back as well. Of course, it is a little dirty, so don't judge me on this. I do drive the car, but it does have not a full size, but it's pretty close. But plenty of storage. I mean, you can put several bags, golf clubs if you golf. There's quite a bit of storage room. A lot of people think it's a 2-seater with no storage. You could take this thing on trips. I drive this car. I try to drive it 2-3 times a week. Drive it to work, drive it on weekends, go out racing with it. Just do a couple little autocross events. I haven't drag raced it, but I want to do a half mile in it too. I kind of want to see what this does in a half mile. It can be a lot of fun.
What's the fastest you've ever had it up to?
This one I've had probably 150, 155 on a close course, of course. About 150, 155. The cool thing with these cars too is that the first gear is extremely long, so your 0 to 60 is about 4.2, 4.3, but you can do 60 miles an hour in first gear. You didn't actually have to shift. So that's why these cars were extremely quick. Quarter miles, 12.6. I mean, the numbers are still not bad for a 1999 car. I mean, new Mustangs might be a little bit quicker, new Camaros, but you're talking lighter cars now, more technology, traction control, things that this car did not have. So it was a quick car for the time. And actually, I think it's still pretty quick. The design profile of the car to me just looks timeless. It looks just like a Shelby Cobra, a Pete Brock inspired Cobra. I mean, I wouldn't think, just by looking at it, it's 22, 23 years old. When I go get gas, people always ask if it's a 2014, 2015. I'm like, no, it's 1999. I mean, it's a timeless car. And these are finally getting the recognition they deserve and finally starting to go up in value. When I first bought the car, you know, I paid $32,000 for this car, and now they've gone up $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 for these cars now. So if you're planning on getting one, get it before they get any higher, because I think these cars are only going to go up in value. The interior is kind of neat. I mean, the gauges are all laid out extremely easy, extremely nice to read. There's water temperature, oil, gas, battery, and then you got your speedometer and a massive tach. Just extremely easy to read out. I always thought, playing Gran Turismo in the video games, it was always cool to see the interior of these cars. They look so race car to me. Now, you kind of looking back on them newer cars, it definitely looks dated in my opinion, but I don't know, something about the gauge layout is extremely cool, especially with the white face backgrounds. Newer cars got the black, you know, it's nothing fancy anymore. The interior is actually extremely stock. The only thing that someone did this is put a different radio in it. The stock one was an Alpine head unit. I don't even know what this one is. I think it's still an Alpine, but you know, it's got different speakers in the door, and it's got a subwoofer in back. To me, all the sound I need to hear comes out of that motor out front. And they are a T56 Tremec transmission. I mean, they're fairly short throw of a shifter. I mean, first and second's not extremely long, but the shifter is tall, which me personally I like, because I like that long throw. It's extremely easy to use. And shifting gears in this car is so smooth. The clutch isn't really tight. There's plenty of room in the car. I mean, you're extremely wide. The pedals are kind of neat. There's an actual crank behind it where you can actually crank the pedals forward or closer to you. That was something that I didn't have in any of my cars until my new truck, which is electronic, but this had it in the 1996, where you could actually adjust the pedals. So you could actually be 6'4", 6'5", and be comfortable in this car. Got plenty of headroom, especially if I was wearing a helmet. If you're really long legs, I mean, I could stretch my legs all the way down. The engine's so pushed far back, but where the transmission tunnel comes down, you get plenty of foot room. The only thing that's kind of weird on this side is, if you've ever driven a second gen or first gen Viper, is the actual pedal box is off to the side. So your feet are not exactly straight. They're offset because the transmission's actually kind of pushed back. It takes a little bit getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's fine. There's no dead pedal, so you're just gonna have to put your foot on the floor. Like I said, these window switches are out of a Dodge Dakota. There's no glove box. You have just a little storage unit here on the side with a little netting on the side. That's your most you get for your glove box. Where a glove box would be, you just kind of have your airbag, and you actually have AC vents, what they call the ball chillers, blowing strictly at your crotch. And that is phenomenal in the summertime to have blowing right at you. So you got the 3 up front and the 2 on the bottom, right at blowing your crotch. It is absolutely wonderful feeling if you wear shorts in the summertime. It is wonderful. But you just got your little ashtray. Some people say that the climate control's out of a Ford. I've seen some Ford F-150s where it looks identical to that. So that is very possible. Pretty plain other than that. I mean, the windshield wraps around. It's kind of hard to kind of tell from the car, but you know, we were kind of talking earlier where the inspection sticker, you can't see it from the front. You have to stand on the side to actually see the inspection. I had a cop actually pull me over saying I wouldn't have an inspection until he actually walked up to the side of the car. He couldn't see it from the front. The windshield just curves around so much. You get a great vision and great point of view. Yeah, your inspection sticker is pointed to the side. It was kind of interesting to see, but little quirks of the car. I mean, this is actually the first year, I think 99, possibly 98, that actually had where you could turn on and off an airbag, which was also important to me because I have a 3-year-old son, so I could have him right in the front seat and I could actually turn the airbag off. 96, 97, and possibly 98 cars didn't have that option. And I didn't want to have my son riding around if something happened, have an airbag blow up in his face, so I could actually turn that off. But, you know, you got a few creature comforts, heat, AC, leather seats. They're extremely comfortable. Even for a big guy like myself, they're not very uncomfortable. They're pretty smooth. Car ride's pretty good. Deep footwell, plenty of leg room, plenty of headroom, plenty of storage. It's an all-around car. It's Dodge's answer to the Corvette. And Corvette, I mean, think about that. In 1999, the most horsepower in a Corvette was 350. It's made 460. And even the Z06, when it came out in 2001, was 385. And then I think 405 in 2001. This is still 460 and 500 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, Corvette didn't do anything more to that till the C6 with the Z06 with 500 horsepower. And that was 2006. I mean, this car was already done. So kind of neat to see. That's when the horsepower wars were kind of going back in the 90s and early 2000s, which is kind of happening again now 20 years later. I mean, when this car first came out in 1992 with 400 horsepower, that was almost unheard of. I mean, a Corvette made 330. So, I mean, 70 more horsepower, and it had a V10, was so exotic for an American car. Nobody had V10s in an American car. And these things new were $65,000, $70,000, which wasn't cheap, but when you're looking at a Corvette 01, which is about the same price with less power and less torque, and a V8, this being a V10 was extremely exotic. For me too, this is the poster car that I wanted since I was a kid. Ever since the RT10s came out in 1992, this is the car that I had on the walls thinking, one day when I grow up and get rich, get wealthy, this is the car I'm going to buy. And it took me 35 years to be able to buy this car. It was kind of crazy. This car was actually local. I actually found it on Bring a Trailer. Made an offer on it, and the guy was in Frisco. I'm actually the second owner of this car, and this checked every box that I wanted. I wanted a 99, I wanted an ACR, and I wanted silver. And having one that was in the time frame that I was looking, the price point, and local, you just couldn't pass it up. And this, like I said, this car has not let me down at all. I mean, it's everything that I want it to be. So, a little quick story on this car too is when me and my brother saw one of these cars at Arlington Stadium for the Texas Rangers. My dad, my brother, and myself went to go see a Ranger game. And as we're driving out of the corner of my eye, I see something red. There's a sports car sitting all by itself. And kind of looking in the corner, it was a red RT10 Dodge Viper. I'm screaming at my dad, go Dad, turn around the parking lot, go in the back, we want to go look at this car. So me and my brother got out of the truck and started looking at the car, just drilling over it. And come to find out, it was actually Pudge Rodriguez's car. And we're just so interested in the car, missing the first 2 innings of the game just because me and my brother looking at the car. My dad's just like, come on, let's go, stop looking at the car. We gotta go, we got a game to watch. And at that point, I didn't really care about the Rangers. I was wanting to see the car. I mean, I love the Texas Rangers, but I was so infatuated by this car. This is 1993, maybe 1994. I mean, that's the kind of impact this car had on me. It's like, I saw it in the park on the corner of my eye, just wanted to look at it and stare at it for hours. There was no internet, there was no magazines. It was the first time I actually ever saw one in person. And the car looked so wide and ginormous, and it just looked like nothing else on the road. It was super bright red. It had the Texas Rangers sticker on the back. I think it even said Pudge on the license plate, if I remember right. It was just, one of those things that stick with you. That was the car of my dreams, and actually seeing one in person after being 3-4 years in production. I mean, it was no internet, no YouTube. So the only time you ever saw one was at a car show or maybe a dealership, if a dealership had one. Because these were their halo cars. When Dodge released these cars, usually a dealership would get one car, and that would just to kind of attract you to bring in a dealership and go buy you a K car, a Plymouth Sundance, a Dodge Avenger, or a minivan. This was the halo car. And we went around several dealerships trying to see these cars in person just to see if we could get an actual, just to see one. So it was kind of neat to see. That was one of the memories of seeing this car in person for the first time.